Through Tukamai's green jungle hell, where the code is kill or be killed, two men hunt the Valley of Gold. Vinero, dreamer of empires, dealer in death. Tarzan and his army of a lion, a leopard, and a chimp. Tarzan faces his most daring adventure in the Valley of Gold.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Hello, this is the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
Join us today as we swing into Tarzan and the Valley of Gold from 1966.
Tarzan and the Valley of Gold was directed by Robert Day, written by Clair Huffaker, based on characters created by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and produced by Sy Weintraub for Banner Productions.
Tarzan and the Valley of Gold stars Mike Henry as Tarzan, David Opatoshu as Augustus Vinero, Manuel Padilla Jr. as Ramel, Nancy Kovack as Sophia Renault, Don Megowan as Mr. Train, Enrique Lucero as Perez, Edwardo Noriega as Professor Talmadge.
Also appearing are John Kelly as Captain Voss, Francisco Reiguera as Manco, Frank Brandstetter as Ruiz, Carlos Rivas as Romulo, Jorge Berute as Rodriguez, and Oswald Alvera as Antonio.
As Tarzan and the Valley of Gold opens, jazzy music take us through the credits, which feature scenes from the movie, presented in a pre-psychedelic format in vivid colors and just little slashes of them here and there.
It's very James Bond-esque of the period.
And I know those scenes will make sense later because now they make none at all. The theme song is punctuated by animal cries, much to my cat's displeasure while we were watching it. And then finally the movie begins.
We're on the coast of some big party town. There are yachts in the water and water skiers skiing.
People eating on a veranda somewhere.
A man with binoculars watches a helicopter approach, and it lands at a resort. Its passenger is a tan-suited Tarzan. He exits the helicopter and goes into a car.
He gets into a pink Jeep, which takes him to an airplane. The man with the binoculars says, "Mr. Train, tell him he's here. He'll be arriving on the 8:50 flight to the capital." Mr. Train is not, in fact, a choo-choo train. He's a bald man who looks very strong and very mean.
So now we're at the airport in Mexico City, and we're in the parking lot where a chauffeur, this is Antonio, is immediately shot by two thugs the moment he exits the car. One of the thugs steals Antonio's hat, and they stash Antonio's body in their car. Then we find ourselves on the tarmac, where passengers are disembarking a plane, and among them is Tarzan, still in his suit. He is greeted by one of the thugs, who introduces himself as Antonio, and says, "You are the man called Tarzan? May I take it to Professor Talmadge?" To which Tarzan replies, "All right."
Antonio takes Tarzan's briefcase and escorts him to the big blue convertible that formerly contained the actual driver. Tarzan sits in the front seat, and we're treated to a travelogue of Mexico City set to that score that began the movie.
It's not a great travelogue, it's just tall buildings.
And statues. It's a lot of window shots and a lot of sun reflecting off the windows. On the way, Tarzan casually asks Antonio if anyone was recently hurt near the car. Antonio denies this, asking, "Why even ask?" And Tarzan says he smells blood, and sometimes that means a person's been hurt. Antonio dismisses this. Maybe someone cut himself? But Tarzan doesn't seem to buy this. Tarzan asks if he's going to meet the professor, and Antonio says yes, but the professor wants to show you something interesting at the Plaza del Toros.
The Plaza del Toros is an open-air bullfighting arena, and the car drives right into the center of the arena, and Tarzan never questions this. He's just along for the ride. He does finally react when, not really Antonio, pulls on a gun. Tarzan grabs at it, causing Antonio to shoot into the air twice. Then Tarzan points the man's arm towards faux Antonio, and Antonio shoots himself. Simultaneously, a shot from a second shooter comes from the stands. Tarzan opens the glove box to open the trunk for some reason. Then he grabs not really Antonio's gun and takes cover behind the car.
He tries to return fire without exposing himself to the hail of bullets coming his way. The shooter hits the car's side mirror, sending it flying into the bullring. Tarzan sees it and gets an idea, but he must expose himself to gunfire to execute it. He dashes out, retrieves the mirror, then aims the reflection that comes off it at the shooter. This reflection of the sun's light momentarily blinds the shooter, keeping his shots from hitting Tarzan. Then Tarzan abandons the strategy and runs to the arena walls.
Somehow he continues to evade the second shooter's line of vision as he comes back around behind him, where there is a large Coca-Cola bottle display standing at the top of the stands. Tarzan gives this bottle a push and it starts rolling down the stands toward the second shooter. He turns to see what the commotion is and screams as the giant Coke bottle rolls toward him. He's flattened, and the bottle continues its roll into the center of the arena.
This, I wrote, is the single greatest kill in an AIP movie ever. I laughed so hard when we saw this. The look on the guy's face when the bottle's rolling towards him, the fact that it was so easy to tip this over that a child could do it. And we've got to describe the scale of this. This is like 3 times the size of a person. And it's really wide around, and it looks really heavy. Tarzan just flicks it off like it's nothing because it's not secured there in any way. So he gives him a Coke and a scream, and the guy's dead. Then Tarzan buttons his suit jacket like a Hagar model and walks away.
Next, we see Tarzan has finally made it to his meeting with Professor Talmadge and Perez, the chief of police. Tarzan had received a summons from his friend Ruiz, but beyond that, he has no idea why he's been brought in, but he's a little curious. Talmadge asks Tarzan if he's heard of Augustus Vinero. Tarzan has not. So Talmadge shows Tarzan Vinero's headshot, which is the only known photograph of him in existence. Tarzan says he looks innocent enough, but Talmadge says the looks are deceiving and he's one of the most deadly international criminals of the world, and he also has an 8x10 of his number 1, Mr. Train.
He shows Tarzan one of his gadgets, warning him not to touch it. It's a wristwatch. This, he says, is the sort of trinkets he sends to people who annoy him. Talmadge takes Tarzan outside to demonstrate what happens if you receive one. He winds the watch a bit and then sets it on a half wall and hightails it away to watch it as it immolates/explodes and basically sets the whole wall on fire.
Tarzan seems amused. This is what he does to people who annoy him? What does he do to people who he's really angry with? Perez says he sends Mr. Train after them. Tarzan wants to know what any of this has to do with him.
Professor Talmadge says that the reason it involves Tarzan is because Vinero thought that Perez and Talmadge sent for him. And it all started a month ago when a boy walked out of the jungle. Incredible, he says. Tarzan's friend Ruiz took him in. The boy, that is. Tarzan asks if the boy said where he was from, and Talmadge says not really. The boy says he's from the setting sun. And then they break for tea.
As they sit for tea, Professor Talmadge continues. The boy, Ramel, was wearing a solid gold amulet around his neck. This caught the attention of Vinero, who took it from him. Vinero allegedly had directions to the boy's home, Tucumay. The boy escaped, and Ruiz took him in. The boy was in tears, Talmadge says, because he had given up the location of Tucumay. And, incidentally, Ramel is the only one that can manage Ruiz's leopard, Bianco. They've become good friends.
Tarzan wonders what the treasure is, but Talmadge doesn't know. He suspects that Vinero is expecting to find a city of solid gold, though. Tarzan wonders what they want him to do. Perez suggests they head to Ruiz's place first thing in the morning. Tarzan agrees as he sips from his tiny little cup. Or maybe it's just small compared to the size of his hand.
Next, we see a small caravan consisting of 3 men leading pack mules to Rancho Ruiz. Ruiz himself comes out, and Ramel, wearing only a loincloth, runs up to greet him as Dinky the Chip looks on. Ruiz greets the 3 newcomers as they begin unpacking their mules. Then Ruiz and Ramel go into their house. What these men are unpacking is guns. And with these guns, they begin shooting everyone in sight. Dinky the Chimp hides behind a building. One of the men goes into the building that Ruiz and Ramel had heard, and he comes out with a screaming Ramel. Ruiz comes out behind them to try and retrieve Ramel, but Ruiz is shot and left bleeding on the ground. Another man throws a bomb into the window, and the building quickly catches fire. Dinky screams from atop another building as he watches the building collapse from the flames.
Later, too late, Tarzan, Perez, and Talmadge donkey trot to Rancho Ruiz. Tarzan sees the carnage and runs to his friend Ruiz. Unbelievably, he's still alive. Tarzan asks about Ruiz's wife, but she couldn't be saved. Ruiz tells Tarzan 3 of Vinero's men took the boy to the jungle. Tarzan says, don't worry about that. They're going to fly Ruiz to the hospital. Ruiz calls him a bad liar, commands him to take care of the boy, and then promptly dies.
Tarzan buries his friend. Perez isn't going to give Tarzan time to mourn, though. He starts talking about how he's sending for 50 men to help find Vinero, even as Tarzan is plunging his makeshift cross grave marker into the ground.
It's the first time that anyone has ever named Vinero as the culprit.
Perez asks Tarzan what he'll need. Tarzan says he needs some rope, a good knife, and a soft piece of leather. Talmadge says Ruiz probably has those things in his supply hut.
Then Tarzan greets the caged animals. Bianco the leopard was the boy Ramel's pet. Major the lion is Tarzan's friend. He and Ruiz rescued him after he was injured. And yes, he's a man-killer, admits Tarzan. But he's okay. Then a dejected Dinky comes up and Tarzan says he knows him too.
Tarzan informs Dinky they'll be traveling together. Talmadge asks Tarzan what he has in mind. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, says Tarzan. Then he heads to the supply hut.
We also see a brief cutaway of Ramel being pushed forward by Vinero's men.
Tarzan quickly emerges carrying a knife and a rope and wearing only a soft piece of leather. I'm leaving now, he says. Perez says, you're leaving like that? Tarzan declares his outfit to be casual, yet practical.
Once again, Perez wants Tarzan to wait for the men to help him, but Tarzan says they'll just slow him down. He shows off Dinky, and then he talks about his army. There's Dinky, who's his scout. Bianco, the leopard, is his tracker. And Major is his fighting force. He opens the cage containing Bianco. Perez and Talmadge jump back. He goes wild for anyone but the boy, they say. But Tarzan coaxes him out on a leash, then releases him with the command, find your master, and the leopard runs off.
Next, Tarzan releases the lion, Major, as well. Then Tarzan, Dinky, and the cats run off toward the Mexican jungle, as Talmadge muses, a bunch of animals and a half-naked wild man against Vinero.
Incredible. At Chez Vinero, the man adjusts a large music box. Also in the room are Mr. Train, the heavy, and Sophia Renault, his girlfriend, who's feeding chocolate to her dog, which she apparently hates. Into the room strolls Captain Voss, the boat captain, along with some other men, one of them being Romulo. Captain Voss says he just completed the extremely difficult task of moving all his supplies and heavy equipment to the middle of nowhere via his riverboat. Vinero does not thank him. Then Vinero asks Romulo about the men. Romulo says they are all there with the equipment, ready for his orders. Captain Voss thinks Vinero can get along without him for the rest of his stay. Vinero agrees and motions Voss to sit. He tells Mr. Train to serve them tea, then begs off to run to another room for some cigarettes. Voss sits next to Sophia and her puppy, admiring the dog.
So Vinero is in his study, where he places 2 cigarettes on the desk. Then we cut back to the main room to see that Captain Voss now has the poodle on his lap. And then back in the study, Vinero lights the cigarettes, then places a small box on a ledge and gently places one of the lit cigarettes on top of it. Then he goes back out into the main room with the others. He tells Captain Voss he owes him something and asks to see him in private. Captain Voss returns the poodle to Sophia and follows Vinero into the study. The poodle jumps from Sophia's lap and follows them. I see you made a new friend, says Vinero.
Once in the study, they sit down. Vinero asks Voss to spell out what he wants. Captain Voss says in exchange for smuggling his junk up the river into the jungle, he wants $50,000 plus 20% of whatever Vinero takes out of the jungle. Done, says Vinero. And then Vinero says he wants to do more for Voss. As Voss says, he doesn't want nothing more. Vinero says, no, I insist, and hands Voss a ring. Voss says, no way, I've heard about your gifts. Vinero chuckles and demonstrates it's harmless by banging it against his desk.
So Voss accepts the ring, and he and the poodle admire it as Vinero says he's going off to get Voss his payment. Now back in the main room, Vinero announces that they shall be leaving for another location. And that includes Sophia. She argues she wants to stay here, but Vinero reminds her that a woman's place is with her man. Then he tells everyone to listen, just as an explosion occurs in the study. Sophia leaps up out of concern for her dog, and one of the men charges at Vinero, but Mr. Train disposes of him quickly.
Vinero shows the remaining men a package, identical to the one that just blew Voss up. He says that demonstration was to, 1, show them the power of the explosives they'll be working with, and 2, to impress upon them the importance of discipline, doing what he tells them without backtalk, obviously. Captain Voss had it coming, he says, and he tells them they need to prepare for the journey. Everyone left standing in the room complies.
Next we see Vinero, Mr. Train, Sophia, and a bunch of underlings at the edge of the jungle, where a half-track and a tank have been hidden under some loose brush. Vinero asks Mr. Train to send the helicopter ahead and to have them keep them posted via radio, but to use discretion when doing so. Train does as he's told, and the tank and the half-track with Vinero and Sophia aboard move out.
And then we're treated to some jungle stock footage, including a swimming capybara. This is intercut with Tarzan and his critters on their mission, splashing through ponds and hiking through the jungle. And then Tarzan climbs a tree and takes to the vines, swinging from tree to tree with Dinky close behind. The four-footed beasts, they just walk.
We briefly go back to the three men and Ramel, and they're still wandering through the jungle as well. And we see that Bianco is still tracking them. Now it's night, and the three men and Ramel set up camp, while an owl watches from a nearby tree. Rodriguez, the leader of the three, radios to Vinero to tell him that they have successfully retrieved the boy, and Vinero tells Rodriguez the man they call Tarzan got away, and he doesn't know where he is. Rodriguez isn't concerned, though. No man could follow them in the path they've taken.
They also tell Vinero that they will be at the Rondo Plateau by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Rodriguez sets the radio down. Then we hear the roar of a big cat. But we see only birds. Rodriguez says that cat would never go near the fire.
But Rodriguez is incorrect because the big cat in question is Bianco, and he's on a mission. Bianco pounces on the man with the red serape. The two of them wrestle. Rodriguez shoots Bianco as Tarzan emerges from the jungle and tackles Rodriguez. Simultaneously, Major tackles the man in the blue serape. Tarzan apparently chokes out Rodriguez with his own gun, and the cats have taken care of the other two men. Ramel goes to the fallen Bianco and starts to cry. Tarzan tells Ramel he's sorry, and it's best that he not stay there, and Ramel leaps into Tarzan's arms. Ramel finds Tarzan relatable since they share similar taste in fashion.
Tarzan says he just has to grab some stuff first. And then we see some more stock footage of animals, flamingos, armadillos, capybara again, all scurrying away from something. And what we're meant to believe is that this is those tanks as they roar their way through the underbrush, sounding like giant lawnmowers. The things that Tarzan needed to get? A machine gun for one. I guess they moved down the road a bit, and they're camping again. Tarzan makes Ramel admit that life looks a little better this morning. Ramel doesn't really admit to that, though. He does say that Ruiz told him about Tarzan and that, like the Highlander, there can be only one. Also, Tarzan will take him home.
I'd like to, Tarzan says. Can you tell me where your home is? Ramel starts to brag about how it's surrounded by the biggest mountains in the world by the setting sun. Tarzan asks Ramel if he would recognize these mountains if he saw them. Ramel says yes, and when they find them, they'll find the biggest cave in the world. This cave is the only way to get to Ramel's home.
You can't cross those mountains. Tarzan also has retrieved the radio that Rodriguez was using. He asks Ramel, how did the men call into Vinero? And Ramel tells him the call sign. It's RZ2 to Arrow 1. So Tarzan makes a call trying to pretend to be Rodriguez, saying that they were attacked by a wild animal. Vinero gets suspicious when Tarzan, as Rodriguez, says he can't remember the rendezvous point. Vinero asks, how much do I pay you? And Tarzan quips, not nearly enough after what happened last night. And the jig is up. Vinero says, who is this really? And Tarzan says, I'm a man who admires your taste in wristwatches. And then he signs off.
Vinero tells Mr. Train that he suspects they will soon be meeting the man called Tarzan. Then he signals for the tank and the half-track to move on out. Tarzan packs up his equipment and prepares to move out as well, but Ramel just stands there staring off into space. Tarzan goes to him and tells Ramel he knows how he feels. He misses Bianco. Then he calls over Dinky the chimp and has him shake Ramel's hand. Then he has Dinky do a bunch of stupid pet tricks to get Ramel laughing. Dinky does flips, rolls over, and hops on one foot. This cheers up Ramel, and now they can venture forward.
As Tarzan and Ramel and the animals walk on, Vinero's helicopter does catch up with them. They toss a grenade at Tarzan and company. Tarzan shields Ramel, and then after the grenade explodes nearby, pushes Ramel and Dinky into some brush to hide. Then he deals with that pesky chopper. The guy sitting shotgun in the helicopter literally shoots at Tarzan, but he's unhittable for some reason. All those shots miss. Tarzan books it, always just ahead of the chopper and the gunfire.
He runs back to where they had been camping, where he had left Rodriguez's machine gun, and begins to shoot back at the helicopter. While there, he also grabbed a couple of hand grenades. So he ties one to either end of his rope, and then he flings it at the helicopter as it flies past.
Like a bolo. It hooks her over the helicopter's clear plastic bubble, and the men inside see they are now flanked by 2 live grenades. One of them puts a call into Vinero to alert him to the danger, while the other furiously tries to remove the grenades before they explode. Then the chopper lands behind some convenient brush where it can explode unseen and inexpensively.
From where he's stationed, Vinero radios back to the helicopter, asking for an update. Tarzan picks up his radio and says, RZ-2 to Arrow 1, one of your aircraft is missing. And with that, he throws down the radio, which too inexplicably explodes.
Tarzan and the crew camp by some water. Tarzan starts a fire and then dives into the water, soon emerging with 2 fish, each staked on a stick. Major's eating his dinner, whatever that is.
Or whoever.
And roars at Tarzan as he approaches. Ramel is a little scared of the big cat. But Tarzan reminds him that Bianco seemed scary too once. Ramel says even Dinky is afraid of Major, but Tarzan says he's just timid. But that makes him a good lookout. Ramel says he thinks Dinky is brave, but then he starts to weep again. He's not brave.
Tarzan asks Ramel what's the matter. Ramel says, I'm always crying.
Me too, Ramel.
He says he's worried about his people. There's nothing Tarzan can do about that at the moment, so he returns the conversation back to Major. Tarzan bets Ramel that he'll be riding Major in the next few days. Ramel stares at Tarzan like he's crazy.
He kind of is. Back at Vinero's camp, Mr. Train reports into his boss, who's in his tent. He tells Vinero that the guard is set as Vinero tinkers with some jewelry on a table in front of him. He goes to leave, but Vinero asks him to stay, and then he summons Sophia into the room, who's wearing a pink baby doll nightie, commanding her to sit nearby. No, closer. He's upset, and he wants her company. He shows her the gizmo that he's futzing with on the table, then says, I'm injecting it with 2 cc's of formanated mercury. Supposing that's a real thing, I wouldn't know. And then says, oh, how it will burn when it explodes. Train looks on with barely disguised glee.
Sophia tells him she's scared of those things and asks him to let her go. She said he's told her that she could go free if she tired of him, but instead he's made her a prisoner. Vinero says it's a shame she's not as strong as he is.
Sophia says it's not a question of strength, but of sanity. Vinero is not a fan of that word. So he asks, you're not a fan of my toys? And before anyone can answer, we've cut away to stock footage of a lynx or some other cat killing and eating a bird. For no reason whatsoever.
Nearby, a cockatoo squawks its disapproval from a tree. Then Tarzan, Ramel, Major, and Dinky emerge from the jungle. Tarzan places Ramel on Major's back. I never thought I would do it, laughs Ramel.
I'm sure Major's thrilled too.
Then we cut back and forth between Vinero and his tank and half-track, and Tarzan and company, all venturing forward to the shared destination of Tucumay.
Ramel is now awake, and he wants to show Tarzan something. He drags Tarzan a little further away from where he was sitting, and says, behold, it's the mountains that he told Tarzan about. The cave that they want is on the other side. Tarzan asks Ramel if he can find the cave, and Ramel says he'll try. So Tarzan says they need to get out of there quickly. So he scoops up Ramel and plunks him onto poor Major's back. That lion looks a little too old and tired to be carrying around a 10-year-old, if you ask me.
They go a little ways, then Tarzan stops. He's caught the scent of a human, and he tells Ramel, Major, and Dinky to wait there. Tarzan hears a scream and runs off to investigate. It was Sophia who screamed. She's being menaced by a large snake.
She's being menaced by 2 large snakes, given the footage that we see. One sitting on top of a mountain in solid black, and there's another one on the floor of the forest, and it's sort of a patterned beige and tan.
Tarzan runs up, picks up the snake, and says he was only curious, and tosses it aside. Sophia tells Tarzan to keep back. The pendant she's wearing will explode if it's jarred. Vinero, Tarzan asks, and Sophia confirms. Ramel runs up and yells, Tarzan, and Tarzan yells at him to get away.
You're supposed to stay in the car when they tell you to stay in the car. But they never do.
Sophia explains the pendant is welded around her neck, and there's no way to get it off. But Tarzan's going to try anyway.
She begs him to leave her, to let her die there alone. But he ignores her.
He tells her to step forward as he holds the pendant still. He steps behind her, and as Dinky covers his eyes, snaps the pendant's chain, freeing Sophia.
He tells her to go over by Ramel, but she doesn't. He sets the cursed necklace on a log, runs back about 6 feet, and hurls a big stick at it, which detonates it. The resulting explosion comes very close to the both of them. They really should have backed off a little further.
A relieved Sophia nuzzles into Tarzan's bare chest. She thanks him, and then goes to Ramel. She is happy to see Ramel. Ramel explains that Sophia helped him escape from Vinero. Then Tarzan announces they'll be continuing their journey.
After a brief scene of Vinero and his equipment still rolling along, we cut back to Tarzan and Ramel, and amazingly, they have found that cave. Luckily, we didn't have to walk with them the whole way. Once inside the cave, which is very cavernous as caves go, Ramel tells Tarzan that if you know the way to the city, from there it'll take about 3 hours. If you don't, well, who knows. Vinero is not far behind them, though, we see. Trekking through the cave, Ramel spots something that tells him that they are almost to the city. But the voices of Vinero's men are echoing behind them. Uh-oh.
Tarzan tells Ramel and Sophia to continue on ahead and let Ramel's people know that they're coming. Tarzan goes back toward the sound of the voices, and one of Vinero's men sees Tarzan and opens fire at him. The man proceeds cautiously, but Tarzan tackles him, stabs him, and relieves him of his weapon, which he uses to dispose of a few more of Vinero's men.
In a kind of a cool fashion. Instead of shooting the men outright, he shoots stalactites off the ceiling of the cave, which fall on the men. And there's always one stalactite for every guy, so they all go down. This happens twice. It's pretty funny.
When Vinero arrives and sees the bodies, he and Mr. Train retreat back to the entrance to get the tank.
In the Lost City, horns are blowing. Just for our benefit, they're near the Pyramid of the Sun, which is the largest pyramid in the Western Hemisphere. But they don't mention that at all.
Well, because the Pyramid of the Sun is not in a lost city.
That's right, it's not. And there's probably not a bunch of gold stashed in the top of it.
So this pyramid is being portrayed for this movie by the Pyramid of the Sun.
Oh, good. It does its role very well. Anyway.
Ramel introduces Tarzan to their leader, Manco Capoff, who welcomes Tarzan to Tucumay. You can tell that Manco is the leader because he wears a crown made up of a piece of a tree trunk. Tarzan asks Manco, as we'll be calling him from here on out, what preparations their people have made for the impending invasion. Manco says, none. And Tarzan can't believe his ears. What? They have to fight or run away at least. Manco says they've lived there in peace for 400 years. They have no plans to start warring now or to leave. Tarzan pleads with him to understand that they'll be coming with weapons Manco has never heard of. And they'll be here in only a few hours. Manco says it will take less than an hour to show Tarzan around Tucumay. Tarzan thinks it's a waste of time, but diplomatically agrees to take the tour. Meanwhile, Vinero has retrieved his tank, and the tank blasts the cave's entrance to make it large enough for a tank to enter.
Manco, Tarzan, and Sophia walk up the 100,000 or so steps to the top of the pyramid. Tarzan is carrying Ramel, so you know he's pretty strong. Manco shows Tarzan and Sophia where they used to sacrifice humans, but now they just give floral offerings. Meanwhile, we see Vinero's tank continuing its assault on the cave. And then Manco shows them where they store all their busted up weapons because they don't fight anymore.
Next, Manco takes Tarzan and Sophia to their trophy room. There are many gold items here, pots and vases and the like. All this treasure is not worth one human life, Manco says. Tarzan tells Manco that this is the room that Vinero will be interested in, and that's what Manco believes too. And, he says, Vinero is welcome to it all, instead of taking a single life. Just then Ramel turns up with Major and Dinky. Ramel says he's fed them and given them water. Tarzan thanks Ramel and then gives his attention to Dinky. Manco takes Ramel out of the room, triggering a switch, which drops a wall, trapping Tarzan, Sophia, Major, and Dinky inside the room. Through a window in the wall, Manco says he's sorry to have to do this, but Tarzan has the heart of a warrior and he can't allow Tarzan to start any violence. Tarzan tells him that there will be violence and the bloodshed will be Manco's own. Ramel calls out that he's sorry, he didn't know this was going to happen.
Tarzan says that he believes Ramel. Manco says they'll release Tarzan and Sophia later, but all the gold is with Tarzan now, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Meanwhile, the tank bursts through the final gate to Tucumay as it and the half-track enter the city. The entire populace of Tucumay is standing in the streets as Manco Capoff comes out to join them.
He greets Vinero. Vinero says that he's come for the treasure. Manco says they have many treasures there, so Vinero clarifies, gold, man, gold. Vinero says he thinks that it rains gold there, and Manco says that's silly. Gold doesn't water the crops. Vinero decides to show off his personal treasure, violence. He aims his tank's gun at 4 men standing atop a smaller pyramid some distance away. He fires and all 4 men fall, presumably dead.
Vinero tells Manco he wants to see a mountain of gold grow here by morning, and he hopes to have the honor of meeting his other guest, the man from Africa. Then Vinero has his men move out, and Manco glares at them as they leave. Then Manco returns to Tarzan, who insists that they must fight back, but Manco still refuses to fight.
They have no weapons.
He will just give Vinero the treasure as he was instructed to do. Then Tarzan suggests Manco should at least evacuate the city to ensure there is no more bloodshed, and Manco sadly nods.
The next day, there's a pile of gold knickknacks in the prescribed place, and absolutely no one to greet Vinero and his entourage there when they return. He and his men get out of their vehicles and inspect the treasure.
Manco comes out and tells Vinero that he is now richer from his hill of gold, and Manco's people are poorer from the lives he has taken. Vinero says he's not finished yet, but Manco says this is all the treasure he can give them, and it is all that they can carry. But this implies that there is more treasure, so Vinero demands he be taken to where it came from. So be it, sighs Manco, and he escorts Vinero to the treasure room.
Mr. Train stays behind to supervise the gold haul-away. Up in the storeroom, Vinero's not impressed by the broken weaponry. He's not there to see their busted-up toys. But then he sees a gold door, and his eyes grow very large. He enters the room and closes that gold door behind him. Stupid mistake number one. He notices there's gold dust on the floor and picks it up.
Now we're back outside where Tarzan and Dinky are sneaking around the side of the pyramid towards the tank. Tarzan jumps atop the tank. Dinky follows him, but Tarzan sends him away. There's a man peeking out of the turret, just looking straight ahead, and Tarzan kicks the door shut, smashing the head of the unalert man.
He really stomped on that lid. Up in the storeroom, Vinero sees a solid gold skull protruding from the wall. Wanting it for himself, he gives it a tug, and it pulls away from the wall. But this also starts to make the ceiling crumble, or so we think. But what's raining down is gold dust.
Now we're back at the tank, now being manned by Tarzan. He aims the gun at the approaching half-track, which has just moved out with its first batch of treasure. The tank fires upon the half-track. One of the men fires back at the tank, and Dinky is caught in the crossfire. Tarzan leaps from the tank and runs to Dinky. Then he gathers Dinky, then races up the stairs of the pyramid as Mr. Train watches.
He seemed pretty confused when that tank fired on him. In his room, Vinero is being buried by a golden shower of gold dust. Aha. He can't get out of the room because it's blocking the door, and he can't stop the flow of the gravel even by pushing that skull back in the wall. He begs for help as Manco listens outside, unmoved. Tarzan arrives and lays Dinky down on a small wicker bed. He tells the chimp that it will be okay. And then Mr. Train arrives, and he and Tarzan fight mano a mano, with Manco still listening as Vinero is being buried.
Tarzan eventually chokes out Mr. Train and apparently snaps his neck, as Vinero breathes his last as he's fully buried, except for one hand, which is still grasping the amulet that brought him here in the first place.
Now we're outside the pyramid, sometime later. Horns are blowing mournfully as the people of Tucumay have returned and take their standard position about 8 feet apart from each other all across the square. And they watch as Tarzan and Sophia say goodbye to Manco and to Ramel. Manco says that he now agrees that violence is sometimes called for, but hopes it is never called for again. Tarzan offers to dump Dinky and Major on Ramel, who agrees to feed them and clean up their waste forever. Dinky, arm in a sling, brings Tarzan Vinero's briefcase, which Tarzan takes lest its contents blow up a chimp. Sophia and Tarzan bid a fond farewell to all, and that's the end. Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we're talking about Tarzan and the Valley of Gold from 1966.
Early drafts of the script were titled Tarzan and the Treasure of Tucumay, Tarzan 65, and Tarzan 66. In March of 1966, the LA Times published a blurb that Sy Weintraub's banner Productions signed a multi-year distribution pact with AIP, the first of which was Tarzan and the Valley of Gold. Weintraub had produced 4 other Tarzan films, the first in 1959.
The January 20th, 1965 edition of the LA Times announced that LA Rams linebacker Mike Henry signed a contract to become the 14th Tarzan on the silver screen since the first appearance of Tarzan on film in 1918. According to the article, Henry would be the star of Tarzan and the Valley of Gold as the film was ultimately titled. The article said he was signed by producer Sy Weintraub and that the movie would start filming in Mexico City the following month. Henry was quoted as saying, "I don't think the other players in the league will kid me about playing Tarzan. They're too busy playing football."
Weintraub said about Henry that he was really the answer to our dreams. We interviewed over 400 prospective Tarzans until we settled on Mike. You see, Tarzan is no longer the monosyllabic ape man. Rather, he is the embodiment of culture, suavity, and style. Who is equally at home in a posh nightclub or the densest jungle. He is the last free soul who seeks adventure and danger, constantly reaching for that last frontier. Weintraub told Henry he had to lose 20 pounds, especially around the waist.
Nancy Kovack replaced Sharon Tate in the role of Sophia Renault just before filming began in 1965. Tate can be seen with Henry in publicity stills that were published in newspapers when the film was announced. Martin Ransohoff, who had Tate under exclusive contract, changed his mind about having this be Tate's first film, and the role was recast with Kovack.
Tarzan and the Valley of Gold was filmed entirely on location in Mexico, near Acapulco and Mexico City's Plaza de Toros, at the Chapultepec Castle, the Teotihuacan ruins, and in the caves at Guerrero.
Henry did his own stunts in the film, working closely with a not very tame Bianco the leopard. And according to one source we found, Nancy Kovack admitted that Henry was an angry jerk on set, and he mistreated the chimpanzee who played Dinky.
According to the AIP press book, Henry had been warned by Johnny Weissmuller to watch the chimpanzee's neck. If he saw the neck hair stiffening, it meant the animal was angry and likely to bite. The press book continues that Weissmuller said he kept a small sap handy with which he conked Cheetah on the head at such times. Henry went out and bought one immediately.
Manuel Padilla Jr., who played Ramel, was already a veteran of 8 movies by the time he was cast in Valley of Gold. He said that riding the line was less frightening than meeting Frank Sinatra, according to the press book. The score for Tarzan and the Valley of Gold was done by Van Alexander.
The March 31st, 1965 issue of Variety contained an article that quoted Mexican playwright and poet Salvador Novo denouncing the use of the pyramids in the film as degrading to a national monument. The Mexican Institute of Anthropology and History responded by requesting that the film be submitted for censorship or confiscated. The director of the institute later blamed the Department of Education for the request. Mexico's Technicons Union argued that the site had already appeared in several domestic productions without controversy and accused critics of prejudice toward U.S. filmmakers. Weintraub and director Robert Day stated that they were in full compliance with government regulations, adding that use of the pyramids cost the production $400 a day. They also revealed plans to shoot another Tarzan picture in Mexico, as well as a weekly television series.
So the Department of Tourism reversed its previous order, calling it merely a misunderstanding, and said that they wanted Mexico to be identified in on-screen credits, which they hadn't wanted earlier. But they asked that some offensive sequences, in quotes, be removed. Director Day complied with their wishes, but was not happy to do so. And after the controversy, Weintraub chose to shoot the next 2 Tarzan films in Brazil. First released at the end of May in 1966, Tarzan and the Valley of Gold debuted in New York City on July 1st, 1966, on a double bill with Frankenstein Conquers the World. The film opened in Los Angeles in September of '66. All these different opening dates are so confusing to me, looking back at it from our time. The AIP press book for Tarzan and the Valley of Gold promised that Tarzan was smarter than Batman because he could grab a snake or a tiger by the tail. And it said that he got the girl not because he was strong, but because this urbanized Tarzan was smart. They did reassure readers that former football player Mike Henry's Tarzan was also strong, though. That's kind of funny because grabbing a tiger or snake by the tail is generally not considered to be a smart move. No, and there's no tiger in this movie. But also in the press book, Mike Henry is quoted as saying he'd rather face a charging African lion any day than meet the front wall of the Detroit Lions on a Sunday. I feel like a publicity flack wrote that and not Mike Henry, but we'll never know. AIP, as they often do, had a book tie-in to go with the film's release. The Edgar Rice Burroughs estate chose Fritz Lieber to write the authorized novel based on Huffaker's screenplay. Lieber's novel was released in paperback by Ballantine Books in April of 1966 and features an expanded version of the film's story with footnotes detailing connections to Tarzan's past adventures as chronicled by Burroughs. Later, an ebook edition was issued by Gateway Orion in August of 2013, and then that was followed by a hardcover edition illustrated by Richard Hescox, published by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated in August of 2019. Taglines for Tarzan and the Valley of Gold include, "All new high adventure." See Tarzan as you never have seen him before, challenging the world's most modern weapons. See a woman become a human bomb. See the lost city of Manco Capac revealed in all its splendor. Tarzan and his animals outwit civilized criminals. A small boy becomes a pawn in the search for gold. At least one of those is true. AIP suggested theater owners get the kids involved by working with a local pet store to give away a dog or even a pony, and also said that a monkey could be on hand to generate interest. If not a live animal, they could give away toys or gold-wrapped foil candy. They also recommended a display of weaponry in the theater, approximating what Tarzan's foes used in the movie, to attest to the fact that Tarzan defeated them all against overwhelming odds. And they suggested a talent search for a local Tarzan model to assist theater owners in their attempts at promotion. Reviews for Tarzan and the Valley of Gold were generally lukewarm. Box Office Magazine's review said, "What can one say about a new Tarzan motion picture except that the old tried-and-true formula is again presented to the seemingly unsatiated fans? Since the role of Tarzan requires physique rather than acting ability, Henry is adequate in his part." Ouch. The The New York Times review said, Tarzan and the Valley of Gold does offer a few random amusements for the adult patron who, by some peculiar twist of fate, happens to see the picture unaccompanied by a small child. The review referenced the scene where Tarzan changes from street clothes to his loincloth and said the scene, quote, illustrates the theme of this curiously witless updating of Edgar Rice Burroughs. You can take the Tarzan out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out of Tarzan.
Tarzan and the Valley of Gold did not do well for AIP, and they passed on the 2 sequels Weintraub produced with Henry as the star. Paramount released them, and the television syndication rights were granted to National General Pictures.
An article published in the June 17, 1966 Daily Variety reported that the main title sequence, directed by Phil Norman for Cinefex, earned the company a Certificate of Merit from the Art Directors of Los Angeles Association.
Mike Henry retired from the role of Tarzan after playing him 3 times, and though it was announced he would play the character in the Tarzan TV series that ran from September of 1966 through March of 1968, Henry was no longer interested in playing the part. As the second Tarzan movie produced by Weintraub and starring Henry was filming, Henry had an altercation with the chimp used in the movie, who bit Henry on the jaw. Henry required stitches, then got monkey fever delirium, requiring him to be off work for 3 weeks. The chimp was destroyed and replaced, and Henry sued the production company for negligence. He won.
I wonder if he started it, his conquer. Manuel Padilla Jr. starred in the Tarzan TV series as Jai, an orphan boy raised by Tarzan after his parents were killed in a plane crash. I couldn't find a whole lot of reviews for Tarzan and the Valley of Gold, so I don't have an idea of what everyone else thought. But I know how I feel about this movie. How do you feel, Jeff? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, I can appreciate their attempt to try and modernize Tarzan for a more sophisticated audience. The James Bond influence here is palpable. You can tell from the opening credits the way that plays out. It's very Bond-esque.
It's very confusing, too, because he gets on a helicopter somewhere, and then he flies from the helicopter to the airport, and then he arrives at another airport.
Yeah, we're not sure about his journey because the helicopter comes in and lands at a helipad at this resort, and we're not sure where it's located. If it's in Mexico, because Vinero is nearby.
Observing.
And at this point, he had and lost Ramel. So I guess we can assume it's somewhere in Mexico.
Maybe.
When the plane lands in Mexico City, an announcement says it's from Johannesburg via Rome and Madrid.
So where did he come from? There's no way of knowing. The movie doesn't even know. Not in the script. I do believe that Vinero traveled from where he first viewed the helicopter to where he ended up in that house that he blew up. But they don't really explain it very well.
It's probably somewhere in Mexico, but we don't know for sure because the longer journey is going to be that plane that landed in Mexico City.
From wherever. Madrid?
Because we know the helicopter didn't come across the Atlantic Ocean.
No. So who knows? It's weird. But we see Mike Henry in his suit, and somehow Antonio knows that's the man called Tarzan, but he doesn't look like a Tarzan.
No, he's a guy, and he looks more like a James Bond.
Right. Or a male model in a tan suit. So it's just kind of jarring to start off that way with a guy who's not really Tarzan. And that makes it all the more funny when he ducks into that supply shed and comes out wearing just a loincloth. And they played it for laughs, and it was funny. And speaking of laughs, my very favorite scene in this movie was the one with the Coke bottle.
Yeah, that was a high point, and they spoil that one in the trailer because I guess all the high points are in that trailer. If you watch it, they have the helicopter blanked by the grenades as well.
Yeah, that's too bad that the best part of the movie happened so close to the beginning.
And I think it works better, at least for this film, to have this modern version of Tarzan. There's no me Tarzan as he's trying to talk. This guy speaks English pretty well, and he is fond of saying, all right.
He's very low energy, basically. But he's very competent. He doesn't ever do anything wrong.
Like I said, he's a James Bond type, but he doesn't need Bond gadgets. He just needs a rope, a knife, and a soft piece of leather to cover his naughty bits. But it's Vinero who uses the gadgets.
Right.
And he seems to have a lot of fun making them. It's almost like a hobby for him.
Well, when you love your job, you never work a day in your life, as they say. And he loves murdering people with explosives.
Unless he's really angry with them, and then he lets Mr. Train take care of them.
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of that. Mr. Train didn't really do a whole lot.
There was one of the guys right after the explosion who charged at Vinero.
Right. Yeah, the little guy.
Yeah, but that's the only one because every other attempt was unsuccessful. The only other one we saw him try was Tarzan, and
he failed.
And he failed miserably.
And he was bigger than Tarzan. Tarzan's a pretty big guy, pretty strong, but...
Yeah, that was played by Don Megowan, as we said. And he played lead character in Guns of the Black Witch, which we'll be watching in a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
And he also appears in Chuck Turner later, so we'll see him again a couple times.
That's good. I bet he has hair next time. He had the Mr. Clean look going on here.
Yeah, I know he has hair in Black Witch. I haven't seen Chuck Turner, but he probably does because he wouldn't want to step on Isaac Hayes' toes.
Right,
with
yeah.
the bald head.
Some people rock it better than others. And Isaac Hayes is one of them.
Another thing we never mentioned is, according to IMDb, Paul Frees is uncredited in the film, but credited in IMDb as additional voices. And it appears that he did the voice of Mako.
Oh, that's too bad. Because he approximated a Mexican accent, I believe, which is not cool.
Well, perhaps the actor who actually played Mako would have been even worse.
I'm sure. They wouldn't have done it otherwise.
It might have been a more genuine accent, but we might not have been able to understand him.
I wonder if anything else was dubbed, because there are a lot of discrepancies in what IMDb names some of the characters and what the press book names them and what the people say their names are.
Well, there's that tagline where they call the city of Mako Kapak. And that's actually the guy's name. So it's not technically wrong, but it's definitely not technically right.
It's absolutely not right. I wonder about those press books because I have a feeling they're written by people who have never seen the movie. The movie might not have been made yet, for all we know. It might just be a series of ideas on a piece of paper that they are forced to generate interest out of. The press books have a lot of misspellings and a lot of inaccuracies. I don't know how many times I've read that there was a tiger in this movie. There's not. Or that Tarzan does this or that, and that never happens. So it's a lot of wishful thinking in those press books. Make it sound better than it is. There's no romance in this movie either, so saying Tarzan gets the girl isn't really accurate.
No, there's only one female character in the whole film, and she's not terribly interesting.
No, she's just a pawn. And they don't even imply that she and Tarzan get together. They just stand next to each other a few times. So there's none of that James Bond sexual tension going on between him and other women.
She's barely even a damsel in distress. There's a snake nearby, like 6 feet away.
She's wearing an exploding necklace. That's distressing, but it was easily dealt with. Well, aside from the nitpicks in this movie, I did enjoy it. I wasn't expecting to like it at all. I saw the fact that there was some mildly amusing parts of the story and that I didn't really find a lot of plot holes in it. It was silly. It was fun. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I think the extra stock footage, the jungle stuff, was not necessary. It's just distracting. Seeing random monkeys and capybaras and birds. And
Armadillos.
Yeah,
it was weird to me to see this be a jungle in Mexico.
Well, they have jungle.
I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying that you want to see Tarzan in Africa. You want tigers and elephants and all that stuff.
Right.
And not big rodents and armadillos.
And an array of birds that seem to be looking on in different aspect ratio than the rest of the movie. Yeah, that's kind of dumb. And I feel like they felt they had to juice up the movie with more creatures than they could honestly afford. And so that's why they put in that extra footage.
Well, yeah, they had the lynx in, or whatever kind of large cat that was from the stock footage.
Killing some parrot or something.
If they didn't provide their own leopard and lion, this would have been incredibly dull.
Right. You have to have animals in a Tarzan movie. It's non-negotiable. But these animals weren't that impressive. They were, I guess Major did kill the guy, but for the rest of the time, he's just sort of like an extra large cat that they have to take along with them. And Dinky's just a giant furry baby. Didn't do much in the way of scouting as far as I could tell. So that was kind of a wasted opportunity. Just should have spent some more money and gotten some real good animal actors. Bianco the leopard didn't make it even to the middle of the movie.
Well, I kind of wonder if they shot this in Mexico simply for budgetary reasons, and so it took place in Mexico.
Probably. The next two films he did in Brazil, which probably was a lot more jungle-y. But I guess since they pissed off the government in Mexico, they didn't want to go back there. I don't know. But yeah, they could have been anywhere.
Right. Story-wise, it didn't rely on it being in Mexico, except that it was.
Well, do you want to put a grade on the movie? Using our standard scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic.
Well, like you, I did not think this was a great movie. I haven't seen a lot of Tarzan movies, and it's been years since I've seen any, so I can't equate it on that scale. But based upon other movies that we've watched for AIP, this wasn't bad. It wasn't boring. The highlight, I would say, as you said, is the giant Coca-Cola bottle rolling over that guy.
The look on his face. Priceless.
Which unfortunately occurs pretty early in the film. And it can't live up to that for the rest of the running time. But it's an okay movie on its own. Like I said, I can't equate it to other Tarzan movies, so I don't know if it's bad or good compared to the others.
How about compared to other James Bond movies?
Well, anything copying James Bond isn't going to be as good as another James Bond movie.
I know.
I'd say it was better than Trunk to Cairo.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
So Tarzan in the Valley of Gold for me falls right in the middle with an intermediate eye. And your thoughts?
I agree 100% with you, as I so often do, but sometimes don't. This time I do. Because it had some highlights, but overall it wasn't nonstop greatness. But it had moments that made me laugh or just sort of made me enjoy it. On a purely shallow note, Mike Henry is great eye candy. Kind of saddened me to learn that he was an asshole on set, but that happens sometimes. So the man himself, a jerk. The portrayal of Tarzan, kind of hot. Apart from that, he seemed a little wooden. And, knowing that he's a former football player and not a professionally trained thespian, that makes sense. That totally tracks. I don't know. I read in one of our reference books that the writer considered Mike Henry to be the best Tarzan ever put on screen. That can't be true. I watched the Tarzan TV series. I watched the odd Tarzan movie as a kid. And I watched the Disney Tarzan movie, which actually I kind of liked. And that was a lot better than this movie. So I do have some reference points. As a Tarzan movie goes, it's fair to middling. As a regular movie goes, it's fair to middling. And it's an I for me too. I can't see giving it an A. But I had enough moments of enjoyment that I can avoid giving it a P.
All right.
Yeah, his line deliveries needed some work. He was very nonchalant.
And don't forget to visit our website, aippod.com, where you have access to things that aren't available to you on an audio-only medium, such as a podcast. There you can watch trailers, see lobby cards and posters, and pick up some more information on some of these films that we've covered. You can also listen to all of our past episodes there. That's aippod.com.
Please join us. And now we'll hop on our vines and swing out of frame. For the American International Podcast, I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.